Before you judge me, let me tell you how I got here. On my 62nd birthday, I thought I was going out to lunch. I wore my best sweater and even did my hair, but instead of cake and laughter, I was handed a suitcase and abandoned. That was just the beginning. If you think betrayal only comes from strangers, wait until it wears your last name. Stick around till the end and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. They say a mother's love is unconditional, that it's patient, forgiving, and eternal. I believe that. I live that. Every scraped knee, every sleepless night, every school play, I was there. For my son, Michael, my only child. I woke up that morning in my modest home in Toledo, Ohio, alone, but hopeful. Michael hadn't called much lately, said work was hectic, that things with his wife were tense, but surely he'd show up today. I made pancakes, his favorite. I even set 2 plates. By noon, I was still alone. My heart sank a little, but I refused to spiral. I checked my phone a dozen times, reread old texts, just to feel some connection. At 3 p.m., the doorbell rang. I opened it to see Michael standing there with that boyish grin he used to wear when he wanted something. "Happy birthday, Mom," he said, holding a small grocery store bouquet. I smiled through the sting in my chest and hugged him tight. "You came?" "Of course," he said, patting my back stiffly. "Get dressed. I made lunch reservations." I didn't even question it. I grabbed my coat, my little purse, slid on the shoes that always pinched my toes but looked nice. I felt giddy, like a girl going to prom. But we didn't drive toward the city, or any restaurant. We pulled into a place with a long driveway lined with maple trees, their leaves ash gold and crimson red. I looked up at the sign and felt my stomach twist. Willow Pines Senior Living Facility. "Michael, what is this?" He cleared his throat. "Mom, we need to talk." "This isn't safe anymore. You live alone, and with your memory lapses." "What memory lapses?" I snapped. He kept talking. "I found a great place. It's safe, comfortable. You'll have people your age, activities." I laughed. That bitter kind of laugh that doesn't feel like laughing at all. "You're kidding. You brought me here. On my birthday?" He got out of the car. "Let's go inside." I refused to move. That's when he opened the trunk. My suitcase was already packed. I stared at it, frozen. "You went through my things?" He sighed. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be." Inside, it felt like time had stopped. Smiling faces at reception. The smell of antiseptic and overcooked vegetables. He handed over papers. Legal papers. A transfer of power of attorney. My name. His signature. Done. I didn't cry. Not then, not yet. They led me to a room with beige walls, an adjustable bed, and a small window facing a brick wall. My birthday gift. I sat on the edge of the bed with my coat still on, feeling the cold seep through my bones. No cake, no candles, just silence. Hours passed. I finally opened the bouquet. It had wilted from the car ride. The flowers looked like I felt. That night, I lay awake listening to the quiet rustle of nurses, the distant sound of a TV somewhere down the hall. The mattress was too firm. The sheets smelled like bleach. I replayed every conversation with Michael over the past year, trying to see the signs I'd missed. The times I said yes when I should have said no, when I loaned him money, made excuses, swallowed disappointment, because I loved him. But that night, I stopped defending him. Something cracked inside me, something essential. The next morning, I asked a nurse for my phone. She said my son had taken care of it, disabled the line, said it was too confusing for me. That's when I realized I wasn't here to be cared for. I was here to be erased. And if I didn't find a way out, they'd succeed. But I'm not as fragile as they think. Not even close. I stopped eating for 2 days. Not as a protest. I just couldn't stomach the food or the truth. There's something about being treated like you're no longer useful that breaks a part of you that never fully heals. I'd raised a child, built a home, loved fiercely, and now I was just a room number. A patient chart. The nurses were kind, mostly, but kindness can feel like pity when you're trapped. They called me sweetheart and Han, like I was 10 or 100. No one asked what I did before or what I loved. To them, I was just another old woman wearing slippers, forgetting things, even if I hadn't forgotten a damn thing. My roommate Doris slept all day and snored all night. She didn't talk much, but when she did, it was about people who hadn't visited her in years. I listened, because I knew the ache of absence too well. I tried to keep my mind sharp, watched the news in the common room, did crosswords, reread a novel I'd already read twice before, but something inside me was sinking, darker, deeper. Then, on the 4th day, I met Ruby. She wasn't supposed to work that day. A nurse had called in sick. Ruby, young, with braids pinned up under her scrub cap and kindness in her eyes, filled in. She was checking my vitals when she said, "You don't belong here." I looked at her startled. She smiled. "Don't get me wrong, a lot of folks need help, and that's okay. But you don't seem lost." I blinked away the sudden sting in my eyes. We talked. She asked about Michael. I told her what I could without falling apart. She listened. Not just nodded, listened. Later that day, she came back with something in her hand. "This belonged to Mr. Henley, a resident who passed last week," she whispered. "We found it tucked inside a Bible. No one claimed it. It was a lottery ticket. Folded, a little yellowed, dated 2 weeks earlier." I chuckled dry and brittle. "And you want me to try my luck?" She winked. "Hey, the world owes you something." At first, it felt silly, but boredom and desperation make strange companions. That night, when the hallway was finally quiet, I snuck into the lounge and used one of the ancient desktops. I typed in the numbers from that old lottery ticket Ruby gave me. My hand froze. My eyes scanned the page again and again. $3 million. I covered my mouth with both hands. I looked around the empty room. The silence that followed wasn't peaceful, it was terrifying. It wasn't joy I felt. It was fear. Sharp. Electric. If Michael ever found out, if anyone did, I printed the confirmation, folded it small, and tucked it into my bra. The next morning, I pulled Ruby aside. "I need to speak to someone. Privately. Someone legal." She didn't ask questions. Just nodded. Ruby knew someone, a volunteer attorney who came by twice a month to help seniors with things like wills and power of attorney. That Friday, I waited with my heart pounding until he arrived. His name was Aaron. Young, sharp, discreet. We sat in the tiny break room. I slid the printout across the table and whispered, "Can you help me disappear?" His brows lifted slightly, but he didn't flinch. "We'll need to move fast," he said. The next few hours were a blur: documents, signatures, notarizations, setting up a blind trust. Aaron arranged for a new phone, a temporary mailing address, and even brought in an independent financial advisor. The trust would keep my name completely off the books. Michael would never see a cent. I signed a new will, leaving everything to charity undisclosed for now. Michael had already signed my life away once. I wouldn't give him the chance to do it again. The night I left, Ruby hugged me tight. "Don't forget us when you're free," she whispered. I didn't cry. I couldn't. Just before dawn, wearing borrowed clothes and carrying only a small duffel bag, I walked out of Willow Pines. They thought I was senile, alone, weak, but I was about to become a ghost with $3 million. Let them search. They'd never find me. The bus ride out of Ohio was long, cold, and silent. I sat near the back, hood up, sunglasses on, clutching my bag like it carried my very soul. In many ways, it did. I didn't know where I was headed exactly, only that it needed to be far. Far enough that Michael, his wife, or any lawyer wouldn't be able to reach me. With Aaron's help, I bought a modest house under the trust's name in rural Tennessee. Quiet, off the grid. No security cameras, no nosy neighbors, just enough distance between me and everything I left behind. When we crossed into Kentucky, I finally exhaled. Freedom didn't taste sweet, it tasted like metal, like blood and fear. The house was nothing special. A single-story brick structure, paint chipping, mailbox leaning like it had given up. But it had clean water, a working heater, and silence. Not the sterile silence of a care facility. This silence let me breathe. Over the next few days, I lived like a shadow. I cooked simple meals, walked to the mailbox, and sat on the porch wrapped in an old quilt, watching the wind chase dead leaves across the yard. Every day, I checked the news, half expecting to see my name plastered across headlines. Missing woman wins lottery, son alleges mental instability. But there was nothing. I kept the winning ticket hidden in a fireproof box under the hallway floorboards, along with my new will, a burner phone, and a letter for whoever finds this, just in case. A week passed. Then, a knock at the door. I froze. I hadn't told a soul where I was. No card, no ID, no trail. My heart thundered as I crept to the window. It was just a delivery man. Groceries. Part of the system Aaron had arranged. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling. That afternoon, curiosity got the better of me. I made a fake Facebook account and searched for Michael. There he was, smiling in his profile photo like nothing had happened. His latest post read, "If anyone has seen my mother, Helen Carter, please contact me or the Toledo police. She's been missing for several days. We're worried about her safety." Hundreds of comments followed. Prayers, sympathy, people praising him as a devoted son. I laughed so hard I cried. They had no idea. None. But what shattered me wasn't the post, it was the photo he used. It wasn't recent. It was from 5 years ago, one of our last birthdays together. I wore a sparkly party hat. He had his arm around me. We looked happy. How easy it is to perform love in photos. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat in the living room staring into the fireplace as thoughts spiraled darker and deeper. I remembered every time I'd bailed Michael out, every lie I covered, every loan, every excuse I made. I remembered how he made me question myself. Didn't you tell me that already? You're forgetting more these days. I thought it was just aging. That maybe I really was slipping. But it wasn't that. It was him, manipulating me, making me doubt my own mind so when he took everything, I wouldn't resist. Well, I was done being controlled. The next morning, I called Aaron from the burner. I need you to update my will again. He didn't ask why. What changes? Make it crystal clear. Michael Taylor receives absolutely nothing. Not a dollar, not a keepsake, not even a memory. Done, he said. You're safe now, Helen. But I wasn't. Not yet. Because something told me this wasn't over. And I needed to be ready. It started with a letter. Plain envelope, no return address, mixed in with the usual junk mail. I wouldn't have noticed it except for the weight. The paper was thick, expensive. My stomach turned the moment I touched it. Inside was a single sheet, a photocopy, my signature, or what looked like it, and below that 2 other signatures. One of them, the second signature on that document, stopped my breath, Richard, my late husband. And the third, Michael. It was a loan agreement, dated 12 years ago. A dubious personal loan taken out in both Richard's and my names. The bank's logo looked real. So did the notary stamp, but I had never signed that paper. Never. I sank onto the worn sofa, the letter trembling in my hands. The handwriting, it mimicked mine perfectly. The same loop in the G of Helen. But something felt too clean. Too rehearsed. Richard would have never hidden a loan like this. And Michael? He never mentioned a word. I retrieved the fireproof box from beneath the floorboards and pulled out the older file folder Aaron helped me compile the collection of financial records we managed to salvage before I disappeared. Inside, I found 3 more forms. Each one bore my forged signature. A cold realization slithered through me. Michael had been stealing from Richard and me for years. Suddenly, the strange tension in our final years together made sense. Richard's hesitation when discussing money, the way we always seemed to have less. Michael's constant emergencies while somehow affording a newer car every year. The quiet arguments late at night I had chalked up to stress. The canceled vacations, the bad investments. I'd blame the economy, aging, even bad luck, but it was him, Michael, all along. I didn't cry this time. Instead, I opened my laptop. For 3 days straight, I dug through files, bank records, and public databases. I cross-referenced every document tied to our names. Piece by piece, the puzzle came together. Michael had forged multiple loan agreements using Richard's social security number and mine. Most of the debts had been quietly rolled into collections. Some were written off. But Richard, he must have paid off a good chunk before he passed. Quietly, alone. One account, still active, showed a ballooning balance of over $80,000. It had defaulted under my name just 3 months before I was dumped at Willow Pines. I sat in that dim Tennessee living room, the computer screen glowing in front of me, my hands clenched so tight my knuckles ached. This wasn't just betrayal, this was criminal. I called Aaron. I have new information, I said. Forged documents, loans. It was Michael. All of it. I believe you, Aaron replied calmly. Do you want to press charges? Not yet. Not because I had doubts. Those were long gone. I wasn't ready because I wanted him to feel what I had felt. The fear, the silence, the not knowing. I wasn't hiding anymore. I was hunting. I started gathering everything, every bank account linked to my name, every old email, every piece of mail Michael had once sent on my behalf. I even contacted our old bank under a legal pretext with Aaron's help and requested years of archived records. Bit by bit, a darker picture emerged. Michael had taken out a high-interest loan using the old LLC from a catering business Richard and I co-founded back in the 1980s, a garage startup turned side hustle. That business? Still technically active. Michael had used it to secure a new credit line. He signed it in Richard's name 2 years after Richard died. That wasn't just immoral, that was federal fraud. I saved everything in encrypted digital files, printed copies filed in manila folders, backed up in the fireproof box. I didn't know how long I had before Michael started putting the pieces together before he realized I had vanished and taken millions with me. And if he was as desperate as I suspected, he'd be coming soon. Have you ever looked at someone you loved your entire life and realized you never really knew them? That's what it felt like scrolling through pages of documents, all tied to my son. A web of lies so tangled it made my stomach churn. The boy I once rocked to sleep had become a stranger, and not just any stranger, a dangerous one. By now, I had confirmation of it all. Forged signatures, loans taken in our names, lies told to banks, manipulations. My late husband silently bore all masked behind the role of a devoted son, but the darkest truth came with a database search. Aaron ran for me. Michael Taylor, currently under federal investigation for fraudulent tax filings, embezzlement, identity misuse. That last one hit the hardest. I clicked through the case file, my hand trembling. Details were redacted, but the accusations were clear. Michael had been creating false identities, inflating incomes, falsifying deductions, and filing returns to pocket the refunds. Some identities were of the deceased, some were elderly, and some were real people, including me. The IRS had flagged multiple tax returns filed in my name over the past 3 years. I had no idea. Suddenly, it all made sense why he was so quick to push me into a facility, shut down my phone, take legal control. It wasn't concern. It was containment. He needed me out of the way. I pushed back from the desk, pacing the narrow living room, one hand pressed to my chest to calm the tremors. My own son had weaponized my name, used my life as a pawn in his con. And when the heat came down, he planned to tuck me away, just another loose end in a messy story. Only now, I wasn't the loose end anymore. I was the one holding the thread. I didn't call the police, not yet. Instead, I documented everything. Every forged loan, every lie, every piece of paper with my stolen name on it. I printed and labeled manila folders by date. I recorded audio notes not because I feared forgetting, but because if anything ever happened to me, I wanted my voice to be the last one in the room. Then, I made a choice. I mailed a complete copy of the evidence anonymously to the Department of Justice. Not to make a scene, not yet, but to plant a seed, so that if anything ever happened to me, they'd know where to start looking. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that he knew. Some nights, I noticed cars parked too long near the house. Once, a man knocked on my door, claiming he was doing a survey of the neighborhood. I didn't answer, I just watched from behind the curtain, phone in hand, pulse pounding. Every knock, every ring, it made me jump. But this time, I didn't run. I called Aaron again. "We need to finalize the trust," I told him. "The will too. I want everything protected." He agreed. We set it all up under my new name, wrapped in legal insulation so thick that if Michael ever tried to claim a single cent, he'd be bounced out of every court in the country. But no matter how many layers of paper I built around myself, the emotional weight still broke through. It came in the quiet moments. At night, I'd sit in silence and remember him, Michael, as a boy. His laugh, his scraped knees, the way he used to fall asleep on my chest, soft and warm and innocent. I thought about the teenage years when things started to change. The distance, the sudden silences, the college calls that came less and less. How had I missed it? How long had he been slipping away while I kept holding on? Maybe that's the cruelest kind of betrayal, the one you watch unfold in slow motion, always hoping it's something else. But now I knew, and I wasn't going to let him rewrite the end of my story, because for the first time in my life, I held the pen. Then came the letter. A plain white envelope, no return address, but the handwriting, I knew it instantly. Michael had always written in sharp, slanted strokes, like even his pen was impatient. Inside, a single sentence. "I know what you did. And this isn't over." I read it once, twice, 3 times. Then I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was so him, so perfectly arrogant. "No, I miss you. No, where are you?" Just a warning, or maybe a threat. I folded the letter neatly and slid it into my growing folder of evidence. By then, I'd been gone nearly 3 weeks. Michael had launched a full-blown public campaign of concern, begging for information, giving interviews to local news, playing the role of the heartbroken son searching for his vulnerable, confused mother. It would have been comical if it hadn't been so chilling. And then, just as I feared, he made his move. A certified letter arrived from the county courthouse in Toledo. I signed for it with trembling hands and sat at the kitchen table to open it. He had filed a petition to have me declared mentally incapacitated. I couldn't breathe. The petition included sworn statements from 2 people, one, a former neighbor, the other, an old college friend of his, someone I barely knew. They claimed I'd shown erratic and confused behavior over the past year. There were audio clips, 2 snippets from old voicemails I'd left, sometimes distressed, lonely, or just venting. They were chopped and edited to make me sound unwell, unstable. There was even a letter on a psychiatrist's letterhead, someone I'd never met, claiming concern over my paranoid behavior and sudden disappearance. They were trying to freeze my accounts, seize control of the trust, drag me back. I felt like the air had been punched out of my lungs. Aaron came that same night. He read the documents, his face unreadable. Then finally, he said, "We've got work to do. But Helen, you need to stay calm. You need to stay sharp. They're counting on panic." I nodded, too numb to cry. The next few days moved like a storm. Aaron brought in a top-tier litigator. We gathered every piece of proof. We had documents, emails, video calls, financial records, even a digital journal showing I'd been of sound mind every day since I left. We scheduled an independent psychiatric evaluation. Her name was Dr. Levine, a kind, thoughtful woman who came to my home and spent 3 hours with me. She asked about my childhood, about Richard, about Michael. And I told her everything. She didn't pity me. She listened, asked real questions, treated me like a person. When she left, she touched my hand and said, "You're the most lucid person I've seen this week." It felt like the first real breath I'd taken in days. Still, the pressure mounted. News of the hearing leaked. The internet, once sympathetic to Michael's missing mother saga, began to shift. Questions filled the comments. Why hadn't I contacted anyone? Was I unstable? Was someone else pulling the strings? The media loves a mystery, and Michael knew exactly how to feed them one. But I wasn't afraid anymore, because now I had more than just proof. I had purpose. In the quiet of my little home, I began preparing a video statement. I didn't post it yet, but I wanted to be ready in case they tried to silence me. I looked straight into the camera and said, "My name is Helen Carter. I am of sound mind, and I was betrayed by the person I trusted most." I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just told the truth, because I knew what was coming. And this time I wouldn't be the one on trial. The courthouse hadn't changed since the last time I'd been there years ago, when I paid a parking ticket and sat in a room full of strangers just trying to get through their day. Back then, I was a wife, a mother, someone who still believed in second chances. Now, I was the accused. Aaron had advised me, dress simply, but strong. Let them know you're not here to beg, you're here to be heard. So I wore a navy blue coat with silver buttons, my late husband's old watch, and a pair of sensible heels that clicked with quiet defiance through the courthouse halls. Michael was already seated when I entered the courtroom. He stood as I walked in, ever the performer wearing that mask of concern. Even smiled. But I didn't smile back. The smile Michael gave me as I entered the courtroom was the kind strangers might interpret as warmth. But I knew better. He was here to bury me. The judge, an older man with tired eyes, introduced the case in a solemn tone. In the matter of Helen Carter's mental competency, the words hung in the air like smoke. Michael's attorney went first, a tall man with a polished voice and far too much confidence. He laid it all out like a rehearsed script. Helen had gone missing. Helen was behaving erratically. Helen was possibly being manipulated. Helen was a danger to herself and her finances. He presented the psychiatrist's letter, the one from a doctor I had never even met. Then came the audio clips, old voicemails I'd left when I was lonely or frustrated, edited and chopped together like some twisted horror reel. I barely recognized my own voice, scattered, desperate, unstable, taken completely out of context. I saw the judge's eyebrows rise. My hands clenched the armrests. Then Michael stood. "Your Honor," he said, voice trembling just the right amount. "I love my mother. I really do. This is the hardest thing I've ever done, but I believe she's being taken advantage of. She's not herself. She's lost." That's when I rose. "My turn. Your Honor," I said calmly. The judge nodded. Judge. I walked slowly to the stand, deliberate steps, every one of them reclaiming my ground. "My name is Helen Carter. I am 62 years old. I am not mentally impaired. I am not lost. And I am no one's victim." I opened my folder carefully and handed over the full psychiatric evaluation from Dr. Levine. Signed, dated, certified. Verdict: sound mind. No cognitive decline. Emotionally stable. Michael's lawyer tensed. Michael's jaw twitched. And I continued. "I have here," I said, lifting a second folder, a full log of every phone call I made the week before I left, receipts for fund transfers to a legal trust, medical records all clean, and a signed affidavit from the attorney who helped me leave Willow Pines, confirming that I was lucid, logical, and in full control of my decisions. I paused, then added, "And I also have something else, but I won't be presenting that today unless I need to. I didn't show it, not yet. Not the file with every forged signature, every stolen loan, every tax return Michael had submitted in my name. That was my ace. Instead, I turned to the judge. He put me in a facility without my consent, took my phone, took my freedom, and now he wants to take what little I have left, my voice, my independence, my dignity. Don't let him. The courtroom fell silent. Aaron sat beside me, steady and proud. Our eyes met. No words needed. The judge leaned back in his chair, tapping his thumb against the folder. I need time to review all documents and the medical evaluation, he said. This court will reconvene in 2 weeks. 2 weeks. As the session ended, Michael turned to me, trying to catch my eye, but I didn't look at him. I walked out with my head held high. The war wasn't over. But for the first time, I knew I could win it. 2 weeks. That's how long the judge gave us. But Michael didn't waste a single day. Within hours of leaving the courthouse, he doubled down on his public campaign. The local news ran a new segment. Missing mother reappears and court son fears exploitation. Michael spoke directly to the camera, eyes moist, voice trembling just enough. I just want to make sure my mother is safe, he said. She's been through a lot. She's not thinking clearly. And I'm afraid there are people around her with bad intentions. I watched the broadcast from my living room, arms folded, jaw tight. There were no bad people around me, just me. Just Helen Carter, the woman who raised him, who sacrificed, who forgave more than any mother ever should. And now he had the audacity to paint me as a puppet. That was the moment I realized the silent war I had waged in my heart was no longer enough. It was time to strike back. I called Aaron and asked him to come over. When he arrived, I handed him a sealed envelope, thick and heavy with truth. Inside, fraudulent loans, forged signatures, tax returns filed under my name. Send it, I said, not to the court, to the Department of Justice, anonymously. Aaron opened the envelope, flipped through the pages, and nodded. This will get their attention. I'm counting on it, I said, but I wasn't done. That night, using one of my aliases and a new online account, I made a sizable donation, $5 million, to a national nonprofit that protects elderly people from financial abuse. No name attached, just the transfer. Within a week, they launched a campaign using my case as their symbol. They didn't mention me by name, but the timing was too perfect. People started whispering, asking questions. How does a mother vanish, then reappear with money while her son tries to lock her away? Comments flooded social media. Something's off with the son. Let her speak. Why hasn't anyone asked for her side? I don't trust him. Michael's carefully curated image began to crack. Then a break I hadn't expected. A journalist from a major national newspaper contacted Aaron. She wanted to hear my story. She promised discretion. No names, no photos, just the truth. I agreed. We met at a quiet cafe 2 towns over. I wore sunglasses and a wide-brimmed hat. We sat in a corner booth. She hit record and let me talk. I told her everything, the facility, being dropped there without warning. Michael taking my phone, my accounts, my dignity. I didn't mention the lottery, not yet. When she asked about the court case, I said simply, he's trying to take control of my life. 2 days later, the story ran, Mother or Millionaire, the silencing of Helen. It didn't take long for people to connect the dots. Was the missing mother the anonymous donor? Was this why her son was trying to declare her incompetent? More whispers, more doubt. And through it all, I remained silent. Because Michael's downfall wouldn't come from an argument. It would come from the truth. The accusation wouldn't bring him down. But the reckoning would. 2 days before the court reconvened, Aaron received a call. It was from the Department of Justice. They had received the anonymous file, and they were opening a case. Michael didn't know it yet, but while he was busy building a castle of lies in courtrooms and on camera, I was already setting fire to the foundation, and the flames were getting higher. The second hearing felt colder. Not because of the weather, though the Tennessee wind had turned cruel that week, but because something had shifted in the air. Michael walked into the courtroom with less confidence this time. His shoulders weren't quite as high. His lawyer whispered urgently as they sat. They had seen the article. They had felt the shift online, and now they were feeling the cracks. I sat calmly, my folder of documents tucked into my lap. I wasn't afraid anymore. I was angry, but not the kind of anger that lashes out. This was sharper, cleaner. The kind that cuts with precision. This time, we went first. Aaron stood and delivered a statement that silenced the room. Your Honor, since the last hearing, we have completed an independent psychiatric evaluation, submitted detailed financial logs proving Mrs. Taylor's autonomy and coherence, and through legitimate public records discovered that the petitioner, Mr. Michael Taylor, is currently under federal investigation for multiple financial crimes, including identity misuse and tax fraud. He handed the judge a printed copy of the public case docket. Michael's lawyer stood, flustered. Your Honor, that investigation has no bearing on... The judge raised a hand. Sit down. The courtroom held its breath. Then came the final blow. Dr. Levine, my independent evaluator, took the stand. Calm, intelligent, direct. Mrs. Taylor is not only mentally competent, she said. She is emotionally sound, deliberate, and fully aware of her decisions. There is no medical basis, none for any declaration of incompetence. I looked at Michael. His hands gripped the table, knuckles white. His mask, that carefully rehearsed facade, was unraveling. Aaron presented our final piece of evidence, a timeline. It showed, in painful clarity, the exact dates Michael tried to seize control of my accounts and how they lined up perfectly with large withdrawals from his own failing business. Coincidence? Hardly. The judge reviewed everything in silence, then offered Michael a chance to respond. He stood. His voice cracked. My mother, she's sick. She's being manipulated. This isn't her. She's not thinking clearly. I stood, and I faced him. I am her, I said. The room went still. I am the woman who stayed up all night when you had the flu at 6, who gave up vacations, who pawned her jewelry to pay for your college classes, who made your favorite meals even when I couldn't afford groceries for myself. I turned to the judge, and he left me in a facility like I was nothing. And now, Your Honor, I ask for the right to prove that I am not nothing. The judge leaned forward, fingers steepled. Mrs. Taylor, he said, based on the overwhelming evidence, the psychiatric report, and the inconsistencies in the petitioner's claims, I am dismissing this case. Your financial accounts and legal autonomy are fully restored. This court recognizes you as competent and independent. I didn't cry, but as I gathered my papers, my hands trembled. Not from fear, from release. I walked past Michael without a word. He didn't speak either, but his eyes wild weren't filled with anger anymore. They were filled with a fear. He knew it was over. At least this part. What he didn't know was that while he spent weeks trying to prove I was unstable, I was building something far more powerful than a defense. A legacy, and I wasn't done yet. The phone call came just after midnight. Aaron's voice was calm but firm. It happened, he said. The DOJ opened formal proceedings. Michael's name is on the docket. I didn't speak. I sat in the dark, watching the wind shift through the trees beyond my window. A part of me had waited for this moment. But when it finally came, it didn't feel like victory. It felt like inevitability. The next morning, the world caught up. The headlines exploded. Michael Taylor, son from high-profile elder abuse case, now under federal investigation. My name wasn't mentioned, not directly, but the dots were too easy to connect. The public remembered. The missing mother. The court battle. The anonymous donor. The quiet woman who disappeared, then stood tall in court. Now the perfect son was unraveling. And they wanted to hear from me, but I stayed silent for 2 days. I turned off the TV, ignored the phone, cooked myself breakfast, watched the birds peck at the frostbitten yard, and wrote letters I never intended to send. But silence isn't justice. It was time. I reached out to Sarah, the journalist who had met me in secret weeks earlier. I told her I was ready to speak, this time on camera. No aliases, no more shadows, no more hiding. We scheduled the interview for the following Friday. National news. Full feature. She asked if I was sure. I've never been more sure, I told her. The day of the interview, I dressed simply. A gray sweater, small silver earrings, no makeup, no stylist, just truth. We sat across from each other in a quiet studio. The lights were soft and warm. And as the camera turned on, I took a breath and began to speak. Sarah leaned forward gently. Helen, the world knows the headlines. They've read about Michael, about the case, but what they don't know is the heart of it. Why now? I looked straight into the camera. Because it's not just about me, I said. It's about every parent who gave everything and was thrown away. Every older adult dismissed, erased, or locked up under the excuse of love. I was almost one of them. And I won't be quiet anymore. Then I told my story. The nursing home, the lottery ticket, the lies I uncovered, the file I sent to the Department of Justice. I left out nothing. Sarah's eyes welled as I spoke, but I didn't cry. I was done crying. That night, the interview aired. Millions watched. Messages flooded in, people from across the country sharing their own stories of betrayal, abandonment, and survival. I wasn't just Helen anymore. I had become a mirror. Michael never made a public statement, but sources close to him said he was devastated, that his world was falling apart. Good. He built that world on manipulation, and now it was collapsing under the weight of his own cruelty. But I didn't gloat. Instead, I got to work. I made plans to launch a foundation, one that would protect elders from financial and legal abuse. Not just in name, with real attorneys, real funding, real advocacy. I called it the Helen Project. Because if they were going to use my name to strip me of dignity, I was going to use it to give dignity back. Still, the pain lingered. Not because Michael was suffering, but because I had once loved him with a loyalty so deep it blinded me. And now I had to learn how to live without that illusion. But I had something better now. I had the truth, and no one would take that from me again. Michael's arrest didn't come with sirens. It came with headlines. Michael Taylor indicted on multiple counts of wire fraud, identity theft, and tax evasion. I read the article on a quiet morning, a cup of tea in hand. My cat curled beside me. The only sounds, the refrigerator humming and the wind brushing against the shutters. I just stared at the screen. Not because I didn't believe it, I did, but because I had imagined this moment so many times that when it finally came, it felt like déjà vu. He was out on bond, of course. Money buys time even when it can't buy peace. But the damage was done. His name was now synonymous with betrayal. Former clients pulled their business. His credit lines froze. His friends disappeared. Even his wife filed for divorce. He was alone now. I should have felt triumphant. But all I felt was hollow. The thing about surviving betrayal is it doesn't leave you whole. It leaves you wiser, sharper, stronger maybe, but something soft dies in you. That blind trust. That belief that love is enough to keep someone loyal. I didn't grieve that softness. I buried it. It was a chilly Saturday when I finally walked into the town center the first time since the interview aired. People recognized me, but they didn't whisper. They didn't stare. They smiled. One woman, maybe in her 40s, touched my arm. You gave my mom the courage to leave a bad situation. A young man behind the pharmacy counter slipped a note into my prescription bag. My grandma says thank you. I didn't seek this attention, but it came gently, like sunlight through heavy clouds. That afternoon, Aaron stopped by. They offered him a deal, he said. 10 years if he pleads guilty. If not, it goes to trial. And he? I asked. Still pretending it's all a misunderstanding. He thinks he can outsmart the system. I shook my head. He's been pretending his whole life. Aaron hesitated. Still no contact? I met his eyes. Not directly. But yes, I had received something. An envelope, no return address, slid under my front door while I was in the kitchen. Inside, a photograph. From my 60th birthday, me in a yellow sweater, laughing with cake on my face, Michael beside me, holding the knife, laughing too. On the back, in his handwriting. You always believed in me. I'm sorry that wasn't enough. I sat with that photo for hours. Not crying, not raging, just remembering. The boy who asked for one more bedtime story. The teen who drove my car into a mailbox and cried when I didn't yell. The man who hugged me tighter than usual the day his father died. They were all parts of him, and I had loved them. But love, true love, demands truth, and Michael chose lies. That night, I burned the photo in the fireplace. Not out of hate, out of release. I watched the edges curl, the colors blacken, the smiles disappear. I didn't need a picture to remember. I needed peace, and I was almost there. The morning I returned to Willow Pines, the sky was soft gray, the kind that doesn't hide the world, just makes it gentler. I stood outside for a long time, staring at the place where I'd once been left like a piece of luggage. The parking lot was still, the trees bare. But something had changed. The front doors opened, and Ruby stepped out. She gasped when she saw me. "Oh my God, Helen." I smiled. "It's me." We hugged, not politely, not briefly, but like two people who had survived something together. Inside, the place looked different. The floors gleamed, the lights were warm, the common room had new books, a better TV, and real coffee brewing. "I heard what you did," Ruby said. "The donations, the interviews. Helen, you changed everything." "No," I said. "I just stopped letting people decide who I was." We walked the halls. I visited Doris's old room, now a reading lounge. Staff smiled. Residents recognized me. Some nodded. They weren't invisible anymore. And neither was I. That afternoon, I gave a speech in the new activities room. Folding chairs, homemade cookies, a room full of people who understood silence far too well. Ruby introduced me like I was famous. But I shook my head. I'm not here because I'm rich. I'm not here because I was wronged. I'm here because I was silenced. And I know how many of you still feel that way. Every eye watched me. Some welled with tears. You are not a burden. You are not forgotten, and you are not finished. Applause followed. Soft at first, then stronger. I smiled, feeling the weight of every lonely night I had ever endured lift. When I returned home, I finalized the trust. The Helen Project would become a national organization offering real legal and financial support to seniors in need. We'd hire attorneys, launch hotlines, build partnerships with care homes and courts. As for Michael, he took the deal, 10 years. He tried to send another letter. I returned it, unopened. That chapter was closed. I spent the last days of the year writing letters to Aaron, to Ruby, to Dr. Levine, thanking them. Not for saving me, but for standing beside me while I saved myself. And then, on the first snow of January, I did something I hadn't done in decades. I wrote a letter to myself, just 1 page. I sat by the fireplace, cat at my feet, and read it aloud. Dear Helen, you weren't crazy. You weren't too trusting. You weren't weak. You were just a woman who loved too deeply. And when they tried to write you out of your own life, you picked up the pen and wrote the ending yourself. I am so proud of you. With love, yourself. I folded the letter, placed it in a small wooden box, and set it on the mantel. I didn't need a legacy of money, or revenge, or even justice. I had something greater, freedom. And for the first time in my life, I was finally, fully, completely free. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe, and feel free to share your story in the comments. Your voice matters, just like mine finally did.